You step on the scale every morning, hoping to see progress from all your hard work. Some days you're elated, others devastated. But what if neither reaction is even necessary? Today we're using an engineering framework that will transform how you look at progress tracking forever. You'll discover why obsessing over daily numbers is rather pointless, yet tracking them is essential. Whether you're trying to lose fat, gain muscle, or just maintain a healthy weight, understanding this one principle will give you clarity and confidence about tracking that you've never had before. Welcome to Wits and Weights, the podcast that blends evidence and engineering to help you build smart, efficient systems to achieve your dream physique. I'm your host, Philip Pape, and today we're exploring how the engineering concept of signal-to-noise ratio can change your approach to tracking progress and measuring progress. Recent research confirms that daily weigh-ins lead to better adherence and outcomes for fat loss than even weighing 5 times a week or less. Yet we also know that individual daily weights are meaningless due to natural fluctuations in your scale weight. Today, you're going to learn how to resolve this apparent contradiction and apply it not just to weight tracking, but every aspect of your fitness journey. Now, before we get into it, if you're ready to start tracking your weight and your nutrition properly, one of my favorite tools is called MacroFactor. It is what I use, my clients use. It's the only app on the market that not only logs your food, it calculates your dynamic metabolism so that it can give you targets for calories and macros each week, unlike other apps that simply allow you to log the data. So if you download MacroFactor from the App Store, please use my code WITSandWeights, all spelled out, all one word. If you want to try that out for free, MacroFactor has the most advanced trend weight and expenditure algorithms of any app. It's super fast, and it does all the complex math that we're going to discuss today. It does it automatically. So go get MacroFactor, link in the show notes, use my code WITSandWeights to support me, and here we go. Let's start by addressing something that might seem like a contradiction. I mentioned in the intro that there is research, there's a study that was reviewed in the Dr. Bill Campbell's research review recently. I actually have a short YouTube video about it if you check out my channel at Wits and Weights. And it shows that people who weigh themselves every day, it actually compared 7 days to 5 days, and it showed that the 7 days was more successful at losing fat and maintaining it long term, let alone weighing even less than that. And yet at the same time, and here's where we have to have two thoughts in our head, we also know that daily weight fluctuations have nothing to do with actual fat loss or gain. So it's kind of fascinating, right? It's like we want to weigh every day for some reason, but we know that the data every day doesn't really matter that much. And there was a review in the Journal of Obesity that found better results, not just during the fat loss, but people who continue after the fact were successful at maintaining their results. What's really interesting is that daily weighing does not increase anxiety or obsession like many people fear or like many people claim. In fact, studies often have shown the opposite. People who weigh daily report feeling more in control, less fixated on their weight over time. They develop a more objective, data-driven relationship with the scale. And the wild thing is that your body weight can easily fluctuate by, on average, 2 to 5 pounds or more in a single day, even with zero change in body fat. And so I want to explain why that is so that you have the context for why then the tracking is so important in the context of this like signal to noise idea. So first, here are the reasons weight fluctuates. One of the big ones is carbs and glycogen, right? Every gram of carbs stored in your muscles pulls in about 3 to 4 grams of water. So if you load up on pasta one night where you normally don't, that could be an extra 100 grams of carbs, means a pound of water weight the next day, right? And that's totally normal. It has nothing to do with fat gain. And then there's salt, there's sodium intake. Higher sodium foods cause water retention as your body tries to maintain proper electrolyte balance. And that's why a salty meal can spike the scale temporarily, right? Think Chinese food or even pizza. Your body is just doing its job. It's very sophisticated, it's very smart to maintain homeostasis. Then we have like what's in your gut, digestive contents, gut, what am I trying to say? Gut content, right? Are a pretty big factor for some people because the food and liquid in your digestive system, it has mass, and depending on when and what you last ate, depending on when you go to the bathroom, this can vary by several pounds, right? And it's why weighing yourself at different times of day is not a great strategy for consistency, because even just literally after having a glass of water, you're gonna weigh more. Then we have our hydration status, which is always changing. It's not like you're a fixed creature, right? You sweat during exercise, you drink more or less water on different times. You might have some alcohol, the humidity level in the air can affect your body's water balance. All of this can cause multi-pound fluctuations. Then we have training, right? Intense training, exercise, especially resistance training, especially a leg day, can cause some inflammation and temporary water retention. Your muscles are holding more water. It's a good sign that you are adapting and you're getting stronger when that happens, but it does sometimes cause a pop in weight. Then we have hormonal changes, right? Especially relevant for women, but even men experience fluctuations that affect your ability to retain water. There's cortisol from stress, reproductive hormones, thyroid function. All of it impacts how much water your body holds onto. And now people wonder why the heck the scale bounces around. Well, there you go. When you understand all these factors, you realize that expecting a linear change on the scale is actually completely unrealistic and not to be expected whatsoever. You actually want your scale weight to look like a huge oscillating up and down line or curve over time. It's never going to be that tight. It's rarely going to be that tight. Let's put it that way, right? It's like trying to measure the tide by looking at waves. I mean, that's a decent analogy if you think of the ocean. It's just pointless. So this is where the concept from engineering that you probably have heard of before, it's called the signal to noise ratio, where the signal is that meaningful data that we want to measure, and then the noise is everything else that interferes with that measurement, right? And sometimes the noise is a lot more than you want it to be. So if I give you a real world example, when you're listening to, you remember radios? Remember a radio in your car? Okay, I'm speaking to my demographic, which is probably a lot of you listening, and you're on a road trip and you get closer to the station and it's nice and clear, and then you start to drive away from the station. What happens, right? The music, that's what you want to hear. That's the signal. It starts getting mixed with static, and the static is the noise. And then as you get further away, the ratio of that signal to noise gets worse and worse until you can't hear the music at all. And your body works the same way, or your body weight, your scale weight works the same way. The trend in your weight, whether you're gaining, maintaining, or losing, that's the signal that we want to know. But all the daily fluctuations we talked about, that's the noise. And in engineering, we solve this using a filter. This is a tool, this is a piece of math that you can turn into electronics, and it separates the signal from the noise. So for body weight, we can do that using a moving average. We can just weigh yourself every day and then use like a 7-day moving average, or what I like, which Macrofactor uses, a 20-day exponential moving average. And, don't let that scare you. It's actually a pretty simple thing. You could even do it yourself in a spreadsheet. But think of it like this. Imagine if instead of looking at the waves hitting the beach and trying to determine the tide, you look at a time-lapse video over several hours. You ever seen those where now you see the tide clearly moving in and clearly moving out, even though individual waves are always crashing, right? The exponential moving average does that. It gives more weight to the recent measurements and smooths out the daily fluctuations. And so as a result, you get this trend line that actually tells you what's happening with your body composition. And I want to get into this, just nerd out on this a bit, because I've looked into this, and I even talked to Greg Nuckols a while ago on the podcast. Why 20 days, right? It's not random. It's actually long enough to filter out most noise, but short enough to still be responsive to real changes, because you don't want to wait 6 months to determine your trend weight. That would be ridiculous. But we also know we can't do it in as short as 7 days because it's still too noisy, right? And so you want to balance the in between, and that's where the 20 days is really nice. And so when I'm working with clients, it's like the first couple weeks, we're just collecting data. Let's not even worry about what it says. And then there's the question of the linear versus exponential. If you care about that, I mentioned an exponential average. A linear average would treat the last 20 days the same, but an exponential average gives more weight to recent days, even though it still considers older data. That's a very smart approach, because what's happened to your body recently is more signal than what happened 20 days ago. So that makes it more responsive to the actual change in direction, but still filtering out the noise. And so what's really powerful about this is it gives you better data with less perfect adherence. Okay, so in other words, no, let me restate it. It gives you, if you only weigh yourself occasionally, you're going to get less reliable information than someone who weighs daily. That's what I'm trying to say. It's kind of this counterintuitive thing, but the math proves it. Just look at how the formula works. It proves it mathematically that if you only sporadically weigh yourself, it's not going to work so well, and it's not going to give you a great idea of what's going on. But if you weigh yourself daily, it will. So again, with my clients, I kind of get on them a little bit when they miss some days of weighing, because I don't want to sound like a scale, a tracking Nazi here, but it's actually going to help you. It's going to help you to know, am I actually losing fat or gaining fat, so that I can change my calories appropriately. So how do we apply this in practice? Well, pretty simple. We need to collect enough data points. That means you need to weigh yourself every day. And the best, most reliable way to do that is first thing in the morning, after you use the bathroom, before you eat or drink, wearing the similar clothing or preferably none, or underwear, something like that, and using the same scale. But this is crucial. This is the crucial part. That's all the logistical stuff. Emotionally, you need to detach emotionally from those individual numbers. Now, when I say you need to detach, like, can you just flip a switch and do that? Of course not. I get that. But over time, as you do it daily, you will detach, right? Unless something else is going on, you will detach. And I see this over and over again. As long as you relate it to the why and the trend and are kind of treating the data like it's supposed to be, like it's meant to be. Like, these are just data points. They mean nothing. The magic happens when you look at the trend. Right. And so going back to macro factor, it handles this for you, right? It calculates your trend weight, and then it uses that along with your food intake to say, okay, based on what you're eating and based on what you're weighing over a long period of 2 or 3 weeks, we know that you're actually gaining weight or you're losing weight. And therefore, we're going to adjust your intake accordingly. Or maybe you're gaining more or less than we thought, so we're going to go up or down with your calories, right? Now, this principle can apply to anything. For example, your calories themselves, your calories and macro targets, I don't want you to hit them perfectly. That's impossible. It's the weekly averages that ends up driving your results. So again, we don't want to obsess over hitting the exact number every day. That's super counterproductive. Some days will be higher, some days will lower. It is the trend that matters. Now, if you're always over, the trend will be high. If you're always under, the trend will be low. But you've got to give yourself some up and down room to navigate. Similar in the gym with your strength. Your performance in a single workout matters far less than your overall volume for the week, your sets for the week, your recovery for the week, the intensity going up session to session. You're going to have bad days. You're going to have great days. Neither of them defines you or your strength level in the moment. It's the trend over time. Look at the weights, the working weights, and the volumes over days, weeks, and months. I can go on. Recovery, right? Individual sleep scores, individual things that your Oura ring tells you, like, oh my God, it's terrible. Your stress level's through the roof. Your HRV is terrible. Don't stress. One bad night's not going to ruin you. One perfect night's not going to fix everything. One night of catching up on sleep isn't going to matter. It's the patterns over time, right? Get those naps in, get the sleep schedule to be consistent, slowly lengthen the amount of hours over time. And I can go on, like progress photos, same thing. Like looking at yourself in the mirror every day can be misleading, but like monthly shots, those show the changes. Now that's kind of a weird example because I don't want you to take photos every day because it doesn't work that way with photos, right? It's not like photos average out. That it doesn't work that way. But for you to see the changes over time, you're going to need data points over time to compare to. And then even subjective metrics like the biofeedback that I ask my clients to give me to rate their energy, hunger, mood. I look at them when they check in, but I really care about the trend because you're going to have stress, you're going to have soreness, you're going to have issues here and there. You're going to get sick, etc. Doesn't matter. What matters is the trend over time. So if you put all this together, what does it look like? You've got to have some sort of tool to track. It could be an app, a spreadsheet, a notebook. Have a system that works for you. I don't care what it is. Establish the protocol, right? When am I going to track it? How am I going to do it? So for weight, we already talked about that every day in the morning, blah, blah, blah. Commit to doing it regularly, right? If it's daily, that makes sense. Do it daily. Consistency matters the most, so don't beat yourself up if you miss one, but also allow yourself to see the benefit of doing it as frequently as you think you need to do it, like daily for scale weight and maybe less for other things. And then you're going to review your data weekly or biweekly and spot the patterns. You're going to look at the trends. That can be a really fun part of it because now you've got enough data to give you a trend. And now you're saying, oh, I'm glad I had all that data, right? Because otherwise it'd be missing and I wouldn't be able to figure out what's going on. Same thing with me as a coach. It's like, if you weren't tracking for the last 2 weeks, I can't help you as much because I don't have that data. And so then you can make adjustments based on those trends, not the fluctuations. And it helps you avoid the obsessiveness and the emotional response. Because now you're like, oh, cool. Like that early bad night I had, whatever it was, eating too much or not getting sleep, actually is just kind of some noise. It's noise in the signal, no big deal, right? And so it helps you reduce anxiety and obsession around tracking. That's the magic of this whole thing. When you understand that the daily numbers are noise, you stop giving them so much emotional power. That's all it is. It's just a false sense of emotional power over you. Then you become more like an engineer or a scientist, right? You're just collecting data points, and then you're going to reveal patterns. And this shift in mindset is really liberating. It is really empowering because suddenly you can enjoy that dinner out without stress. You know it's just noise in a larger signal. You start to see your fitness journey as a data-driven process rather than an emotional roller coaster. So the next time you step on the scale, remember, you're not looking at a verdict, a judgment. You're collecting a data point that, combined with many others, dozens, hundreds of others, reveals the true story of your progress. And this isn't about weight tracking, right? This is about the mindset of an engineer, actually. That's why you listen to me, I think. Someone who can look past the daily noise and see the signal that matters. All right, so if you want to start tracking the smart way, a great way to do that for your food and your weight, which then gives you your metabolism and your targets, if you're trying to gain fat or gain muscle or lose fat, is to download Macro Factor and use code WITS and WEIGHTS, all one word, to try it out. You're going to get access to one of the best trend weight and expenditure calculators out there that's doing it for you as you log your weight, as you log your food, makes it super easy. All right, until next time, keep using your wits, lifting those weights, and remember, in fitness, as in engineering, the signal is in the noise. You just have to know how to find it. I'll talk to you next time here on the Wits and Weights podcast.